What's going on, everybody? You are listening to the Event Guys podcast. Our goal on this show is to help event profs be successful in this awesome industry that we're in. And whatever your path is, whether you're starting your own company, building your career, or developing your personal brand, we promise to bring together amazing guests and discuss relevant topics to help you along the way. Today, the Event Guys talk to Matt Radicelli, founder of Rock the House Entertainment out of Cleveland, Ohio. He tells the guys how he built this company and the team, and now how he's focused on building his personal brand and expanding his career in the event industry. Awesome conversation. Enjoy this with Matt Radicelli. Cleveland rocks. Matt, thanks so much for joining us, man. This is fantastic.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, guys.
So I first saw you in which ILEA Live was it, or a special event? It wasn't Seattle. It was, what city were we in when I saw you do a presentation?
Well, that wasn't the first time we met. The first time we met, I'm pretty sure. Wait, time out. Super important. I need to know: is this a family-friendly show, or are we swearing like sailors today?
You could do whatever you want. So our basic rule for each other is we're not trying to swear as much as we can.
Okay.
But when the moment comes, or you want to say a swear word, that's fine.
All right, fair enough. Well, I think the first time that we met, the first time we met, we were on a bus in Detroit after some sort of leadership meeting or some day of education or something, and I'm pretty sure we were all drinking tequila on a bus headed someplace.
Yeah, that sounds like me.
That sounds right.
It sounds like me too. Definitely like 5 or 8 years ago. So, yeah.
That's funny. So we partied together, but then I had the chance again. So I saw you do a presentation at ILEA Live.
Yep.
And it was about financials and running your business, and I was blown away. Because a lot of these, you go to these things and you hope to take something away, and you hope to meet some good people, but a lot of the presentations are fluff, or people are giving you a sales pitch, but your stuff was straight up like just fire, and I took so much good stuff away from it. And then Nicholas, where did you meet Matt at?
Where did I meet Matt? Matt, I don't remember. I've seen Matt from the DJ world several times. I've seen him speak. I saw Matt speak at probably a similar presentation to what you saw, Derek, which was the Day of Education in Cleveland. Eric and I went there. We saw the presentation, a lot of metrics, and just the way you were firing that off, we were like, wow, we've got to get our shit together. So that was, I think, the first time we're kind of like sunk in. And then I saw Matt present at Midwest DJs Live, a conference in Milwaukee, and we got to get coffee. And Matt had a little travel debacle that I got to give him a ride to the airport. I was super nervous. Actually, I was kind of fanboying, really, and almost got lost on the way to the airport or something like that.
Nice.
I was nervous. Yeah.
And Mike, this is your first time talking to Matt, right?
Yeah, first time. I've heard a lot about you, Matt, from these two guys, and especially from Nicholas. So good to officially meet you. Thanks for coming.
Oh, my pleasure. Nice to meet you, Mike.
Yeah. So here's the thing, Matt. The whole point of us wanting to do this podcast, there's a million of them out there. Everybody's trying to do it. All the ones I listen to, there's only a handful that get it right? Like that tell stories, that aren't just trying to pitch something. So our whole goal is to talk to people who are deep, who have success, who have a story to tell, and we want to kind of get in your mind, want to get in your heart a little bit, and just have you share what makes you, how you grew your company, how your mind works in ways that other people's minds don't. Where when they hear your story, they'll pull some things away and, make some new fans along the way. So that's kind of like our goal is to really, get into who you are and what your mind is like. So with that said, maybe give us like a brief history of your career personally and how you built your company, and just talk about from where you started in the event industry to where you are now.
Cool. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. My history in the industry is pretty unique. I started as a kid, real young. Parents got divorced. It was the catalyst to me sort of jumping into entrepreneurship very early, and it was the thing that led me to hustle. Is the best way to put it. Do a little teen night here, do a wedding there. I got into some audiovisual installation stuff for Champs and Damons, and things evolved into meeting some really great people in the DJ industry, and having the opportunity to do a bar. Actually bat mitzvah for the first time when I was about 21. And I realized very quickly that I was going to be good at that market, doing well, serving the customer and the clientele in the Judaic world. And it just sort of took off from there. So that was my first exposure to the idea that in order to start and have a thriving business, you first have to have talent or something that people want. And I should say that I think I've been very fortunate and lucky along the way, because I've always had that thing that somebody wanted at the moment, and they're willing to trade money for services of some sort, right? So in this case, it was the bar and bat mitzvah industry, and that grew very rapidly. 1999, by the way, to give you a marker there. That was when the Rock House Entertainment Group company incorporated. 20 years later, 2019, we were on track to do almost $10 million. 85% of what we were working on at that point was corporate.
Hold on.
Yeah.
You can't just jump from nothing to $10 million. When you say we were on track to do, so what was that like with 50 different DJ, like 10 million, not just you, like what was $10 million?
Well, I figure we have a whole podcast, so we can get into whatever you want to, but the growth and evolution right around 2005 was when we, and it's always we, first of all. So, you're asking no, it's we. It's always been we. That's why Matt Radicelli's name's never been on the marquee. Okay, it's we, us, and our. Never I, me, or my. And in 2005, we realized that the things that were commoditized were much more likely to be picked apart in a price war discussion, like a DJ. So when we were super early to the game to sell things like uplights and photo opportunities, they weren't even photo booths then. They were just like, green screen installations and video green screen booths, things like that. What some really great friends called extra entertainment. It did well for us. We realized people were willing to pay more for that stuff than they were for the DJs. The DJs became, as I learned later, the loss leader. They were the things that grew it. So the DJ portion of the business grew rapidly until the point at which we sort of got bored. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean that there's only so much you can grow up and out on certain things that you're doing before it automatically or naturally evolves into something else. And that was our skills blossoming into the corporate realm, the nonprofit realm, and other things that had to do with production and media. So from 2005 until about 1999, there was rapid growth and expansion where the social side of the business, I'm not going to say was stagnant. That's not it. There were just certain parts that went up and certain parts that went down at the time. But the total revenues of social, didn't grow drastically one way or the other for 10, 15 years. And I'm not saying didn't. We only had 1 year, and that was I think we had a negative 5% net, but we still grew on paper. I'm sure you know what that can mean. But we never had a down year, even through the correction way back when. So, we went from nothing to on track to 10 million. And
so it sounds like your growth wasn't necessarily like a lot of DJ companies just like they reach capacity with the guy, and he adds another guy, and then they add another guy, and that's like I think the traditional growth of a DJ company. But like you said, you didn't go so much up as you went out. And also, was weddings ever a part of your primary source of income, or was it always like you said the Judaic market and then into like the corporate nonprofit stuff? Like what was the were weddings ever a part of that?
Are you asking about me personally or about the company?
Rock the House.
For sure. So the gentleman who now is the majority owner of Rock the House, his name is Ryan Konikoff, and we can get into that later. In 2019, I sold 51% of the company to my best friend, one of my partners, and when he came back from being a cruise director on cruise lines, he came back and said, I want to spend a little bit of time here. I don't want it to be a full-time thing, not forever thing, but I'd like to have a chance to grow a couple of these things that aren't important to us. And, what can I do? So I made a great deal with him up front. I was like, here's a modest salary. And yeah, you can have points based on you growing this division of the business. So at the time, I tell you, no joke, we had maybe $5,000 of total wedding revenue. I'm pretty sure that jumped up. That he knows the numbers right off the top of his head, but it was stupid that we went from 2007 or 2008 to like hundreds of thousands of dollars in weddings overnight. And if that hadn't been the case, and I want to give him some serious kudos for it, we would not have had the momentum that we had getting through the recession, in 08, 09, et cetera. It was a huge part of it. So I think that if you want to talk about averages and, what people would say with DJ math, weddings have always been somewhere between that 400 and 600 unit thing for us. We're definitely a volume house. I don't pretend that we're not. but we're a volume house that treats the customers like it's boutique. That's the goal. And the pricing matches that, which I talked to Nicholas about. Nicholas and I have a chance to work together weekly. And that's very important, to grow that style of business. Because it's not so much that you're going after more customers, you're going after either different customers, right? Or you're going after a higher average dollar sale because there's something that you can add value to for the clients that are willing to pay for it. But weddings were a huge part of it, Derek, for sure.
And when you say you grew to that like 400 to 600 unit range, like you said before, was a lot of that revenue from additional services like the photo booths and all that kind of stuff in the production on top of just, the DJ services?
Yeah, I mean, we talk about averages a lot. I was never really and have not been. I think information doesn't hurt anybody, right? So like, if you want to talk about average dollar sales, what is it that somebody thinks is a great average dollar sale? Well, it depends on your market. We hear that all the time, right? Well, in my market, blank, etc. Our average dollar sale is usually between 3 times and 4 times that of the people that are in our market. So that gives you some indication. It would mean that the DJ portion of the package is usually somewhere between about 20 and maybe 40% of that, and the rest comes into play with options and upgrades and things that aren't even DJ related.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So I'm curious, if you were sitting at a round table with some DJs, some solo ops who were like, I want to grow my company and things, would you tell them would you recommend that's the path of how to grow your company is to think, because people, you do what you know, right? If you're a mechanic working at a dealership and you want to start your own business, you go and you start a garage fixing cars. So guys think, I'm a DJ, I'm going to go DJ, but for myself. And so sometimes you got to get out of your comfort zone when you think about things like, all of the other things that you do, the audiovisual production. And I know now you're even, and you guys can talk about this, the live streaming and a lot of the video production you guys are doing. Mm-hmm. But would that be something that you would tell a young guy trying to grow his company, is that you really got to not only learn, what all these other things are, but grow into those if you want to really, grow your company?
I think that's a little bit of a loaded question, the way that you're asking it. But I think that anybody I'd be sitting with that's looking for advice, I'm always hesitant to give advice, but I'd be saying, if you're passionate and you're talented and people are telling you that you're good at a thing, you just don't think that you're good at it, the money will follow. And if that can stay true every step of the way, and the phone is ringing more than you have opportunity or want to go perform, yes, you might be able to grow a DJ company. We all know plenty of people that have every right and they're great at doing this business, but we also know just as many that have no business being in this industry. And I mean that nicely. It is seriously, it's kindly said. I just mean that just because somebody is able to play music and make people dance every once in a while doesn't make them great business owners and doesn't make them great with customers. And it goes both ways. Yeah. So that round table of guys, girls, whatever it is, people that are sitting down talking, do you love it? Are you good at it? Are you booked out more than you have dates? If yes, continue. If not, work harder until you get to that point, because there just isn't a way to scale a business unless you're copying another business model that isn't talent based or whatever, and you're just going to rubber stamp it and carbon copy it and make it better. That's great if you can pull it off. But if what you're doing is service-based and it's based on talent, good luck.
Yeah. Actually, you made a really good point. In the event industry, technically speaking, there's no barrier to entry.
None.
Any 19-year-old who goes and buys a mixer and a couple of cheap speakers can call himself a DJ. And I think that's kind of a challenge we all faced. Any guy who buys the nicest new Sony camera can say he's a photographer. And that's where I think a lot of the value we'll get from this conversation with you is the guy who just says, I'm a this, and somebody who says, I've grown my company to $10 million. There's something in between there that says this guy can do it, and this guy can't. So I cut you off a little while ago when you were trying to tell your story, about, your family and getting you into that. I would love to hear more about how your mind gets to a place where it just works the way your mind works with, the way you're so, adherent to the numbers and to the analytics and to processes and systems. A lot of people's minds just don't work that way. Like, how did you get to a place where you, or if how you became somebody who was able to look at things from that perspective? Because I think that's where the the diamond in the rough of a conversation like this is how you tap into that sort of thought process and start to run your business that way.
Yeah, I think just to piggyback on that, Derek, the ability for Matt to switch, knowing Matt, to know your ability to switch from the creative world, and if we need you to design a flyer right now, like you can jump on and start to work at that, or you could jump over and start talking about P&Ls and jump on some pivot tables, and that is a really unique skill set, I think, to be able to operate in both of those realms.
Yeah, it's the thing. It makes me smile, first of all. Thank you for noticing, because just like I said on the talent side, you have to be told that you're a thing sometimes to have it validated that maybe that thing is marketable. And for me, that was the reason that I started to get into coaching and consulting, and how it was that I discovered that I like building people more than I like building things ultimately. I realized that I was enjoying building our team, right, and our company and the systems of our company more than I was necessarily enjoying the repetitive nature of building events on a weekly basis. And I've done both, up until very recently. But how did it happen? Failing, straight up. It's based on being scrappy, bootstrapping, and just doing the things that you need to accomplish something. Now, finding out that you're good at it after you're forced to do it, that's a different story. There's plenty of things that I have not been great at that I can do. Sort of jack of all trades, masters of none. I'm sort of in a weird spot where if I take a test, I'm going to be 50-50 right brain, left brain. I can hold my own in almost every conversation about most things you can throw at me that are event or technical related. But that doesn't make me the smartest guy in the room by a long shot. And I don't pretend to be ever. I always want to learn. I always want to ask questions. And I'm not scared to say I don't know. But all the things that you guys just mentioned, graphic design, my ability to jump into a spreadsheet, potentially to calculate the load limits on a rig, that's flying over 1,000 people's heads, like those things are all things that I learned because I had to learn how to do it, and I was dedicated to bettering myself.
So would you credit to more like a need presented itself before the desire to learn it? Or was it the other way around, if that makes sense?
It does make sense. None of it was set off. There's no checklist, right? There was like, I'm going to learn how to do that, that, and that. It all happened organically and in motion as the journey was happening along the way. So when did I really cut my teeth on designing flyers? Well, I was really, really interested when I was 16, 17, 18, all of a sudden I was 20 when I was running a mini franchise of teen clubs in Cleveland. And every week I would come up with the next concept for the following week, slap $1 higher price on it, make a new flyer, try to make the flyer, a little risque, just risque enough that it would make it into the front door of the schools at the time and not get kicked out, but have people go, man, I want to be there. And, that's how I learned how to market.
So wait a minute, you ran a mini franchise of teen clubs in Cleveland.
Oh yeah.
Wait, Matt, do you have any of those flyers that we could see, we could throw into the show?
Oh yeah, I'll get you whatever B-roll you need. There's flyers on. Yes, I'll get you.
Yeah, we want to see those.
There were at one time the highest number ever was 5 locations of the same name that we had running in 5 different cities in the Akron, Cleveland area. And
was it something like Spankies or like what?
It totally
the
sounds
teen
like a
clubs
teen
always have the funniest names.
At the time, it was called Pulse. So there were lots of different names. It was called Pulse Teen Club.
Classic.
And it did well. I credit Pulse to the down payment on my first house. Like however you want to look at it, it did well. But yeah, that's how I learned to market.
That's awesome. That's
and make flyers.
So many questions I just took out of everything you just said. We're probably going to jump around a whole bunch of different things if that's okay.
Let's
and
go.
If you want to go in one direction, you take us there. But so you talked about, you guys operate at scale, at volume, but you treat clients a very particular way. So maybe talk about how you, what is your client process? How do you take care of clients? How do you make sure they feel like they're getting very, boutique niche type service? And is there any particular like software tools or systems that you guys use to manage the whole client process from beginning to end?
So there's lots of trade secrets, right, that are in the heart of how Rocked House does business, but those systems have been fine-tuned with the process of how we do business, which is really just treat somebody like you'd expect to be treated, period. A lot of the core of my coaching and consulting comes down to simple things, blocking and tackling and just realizing that we just need to clear the noise out. So emails. emails need to be returned in less than 24 hours, period. Customers come first. So you're sitting on some priority stuff. You've got some management things and a couple fires to put out, and you've got a couple sales emails. Those sales emails come first. There's just a very methodical way to say this is how we do business. And yeah, things get shaky. The moment that you're humming and you get on the highway and something's a little bit out of balance, it starts to shake a little bit until you tune it. So Ryan, again, to coin some of his language, he always said lean into discomfort, right? So our partners and I, we all basically continue to push ourselves beyond the limits of comfort at all times in order to continue to grow and fine-tune our systems. And what's funny is we'd find ourselves in the exact same moment. You can probably relate to this, guys. You find yourself in a moment where you're like, man, I just don't know if I can do any more of this. Or I don't know if I can work this hard or, this many shows or whatever. And then you realize that you're doing 15% more than you were last year and the year before that. And your tolerance increases.
Right.
But what's really happening is you haven't changed a bit. You're just reaping the benefits of the results and the hard work that you put in over those time frames. So if you ever decide, which is a horrible idea for most growing businesses, if you decide to take your foot off the gas, you're probably going to be okay. But let's never take our feet off the accelerators,
Yeah. Yeah. So on that note, you mentioned a little while ago, one of the things, if I wrote it down right, like if the phone is ringing more than you can perform, you're doing something right.
Yeah.
What do you guys, word of mouth, biggest one, or what kind of advertising and marketing do you guys do to keep growing the business? Because you're in Cleveland. It's not like you're in Chicago. I mean, we're Detroit. So, Detroit and Cleveland, I would think, are pretty comparable markets, probably.
Well, that's what people from
Chicago.
Detroit think about Cleveland. But, I don't think people from Cleveland would say that about Detroit.
That you think that what? Cleveland is bigger or smaller than Detroit?
I would just bust in your balls, man.
Oh. Well, listen,
I told Nick,
it's not like we're
I'm
Pittsburgh,
not funny.
for Pete's sake.
I'm
Come
not
on.
funny, and when I try to be funny, it doesn't work out well. So, yeah,
No,
Cleveland and Detroit are super similar, actually.
You've earned enough respect from me that everything you say, I'm like instantly.
Yeah, we're just
trying
gonna trust whatever you say.
I'm trying to find the logic in that nugget. Like, okay, so he's done an analyzation of the Detroit and Cleveland markets. Like, you probably give me some information. That's
Matt's going to tell us that, like, hey, the next investment you're going to go to McDonald's, and whatever the little wrapper that comes with the burger, that's where you put your money. And Mike's like, got it, writing it down.
Got it
like,
done.
Nice.
Done.
Actually, we might talk about Bitcoin and Dogecoin here in a little while and see what you know about those.
Let's go.
But yes. All right, we're definitely going there. So in your market, like Cleveland, we've all we've enjoyed good times there. I used to party in the Flats all the time. I love that city. We travel there to do weddings, and I love downtown Cleveland. I personally, from my experience, think it's a clean, awesome, fun downtown area.
Heck yeah.
There's a great Mexican place with great tequila there. I can't remember the name of it, but it's downtown on one of those wobbly streets.
Do you know what it is?
I mean, there's plenty of them. There's lots of nice places to have great tequila and Mexican. So I'm not sure, Nicholas, which one you're talking about, but I'll take you to wherever you want to go.
Let's
All
make
right.
a commitment now that when you come back for your second episode with us, we're going to start with a shot of tequila.
Great.
I love
Go.
it. Okay, so anyway, back to my question. Advertising and marketing, at this point where you guys have grown, and also back when you were first starting, what are some strategies you guys use? And again, every question is, to whatever level of comfort you feel, sharing with us. But obviously, people would love to hear from somebody who has gone down that road before. What do you guys do from an advertising and marketing standpoint?
Well, what we did then and what's happening now, they're very similar, but I also think that if you want to dive really deep under the hood, they have to be different because the way people buy is so much different now. But advertising and marketing and sales, they're no different now than they were, in the early 1900s when, things like Industrial Revolution and widespread marketing were a thing that were being written about in books and stuff, right? So when you read things like Lincoln on Leadership and other things, it's strange how it is that if you just do a good job and people talk about it, it's going to grow, right? So it's not a surprise. What surprises me and why I say it's strange is that we can't ever beat that. There doesn't seem to be a thing that allows for anything to travel as far or as fast as a referral, period. So whenever we're having these root discussions about, well, what am I supposed to do to market the business? The first thing I want to do is basically to shake people and bang their head up against a brick wall and go, you're not doing the core thing, which is to talk to the people you're doing a great job for about referring you, or simply asking yourself, am I doing a good job to begin with? Which is really, really rough. And I'm sorry, again, I say it kindly, but you hear guys that are pioneers in the DJ industry that have been part of or been the reason for the nearly national franchise numbers from, I'm talking like the 80s and 90s. What you're going to hear are stories about they would be at a 2-to-1 ratio at a minimum of go perform on a project on Saturday, phone rings twice. They book 2 jobs. And then those things, just like the thing I talk about in my seminars about the pile of champagne glasses, the top glass overflows and it continues to grow. And that's how a multi-op is born, right? So that is marketing. So I would argue, and I have ended up in conversation about it, that is marketing. So payroll dollars put in the right place for people that are talented is marketing.
Ooh, that's a good one.
And if you do it the right way, and marketing is an investment, not an expense, okay? If you do it the right way, you almost have to do none of the other styles of marketing for a healthy, growing, service-based business. It's not the same way for other business types. So, what's going on now? All the same things that everybody else is working on. I don't mean that we don't have our own trade secrets and little things we're doing that work, but have your SEO in order. Make sure that everything that you're working on is as good as it can get. And it gets much harder the bigger you get, right? The bigger you are, the more little things can break here and there. But treat people well. Treat your vendors right. Make sure you've got an army of people selling for you because you're doing the right things all the time. Price yourself fairly. Do whatever it is from a marketing perspective that you can to fix a problem when it happens. We realized after a number of years that we were always doing the right thing, and vendors would always, it became a joke, this is a funny story. Became a joke that if something went wrong, somebody would know to say to somebody else, well, just go tell them you want your money back. Well, I know a lot of vendors in our industry that are like, nope, I'm not giving you your money back. I performed a service. I'm sorry you didn't like it. That's not how I did business. It's not how we did business.
I think I'm probably one of them.
Okay. And the thing is, that's what made us different, was that we realized that for a number of years, we had a money back guarantee. We just never said it out loud. And I decided to jump out there and yell it from the mountaintop and go, if you're not happy, it's free.
How many times have people called you on it?
It's easier to say it's a percentage. And that percentage of total revenues was always less than 1/2 of 1%. Was never greater than 1/2 of 1%.
Wow.
So, but that could have been dozens of customers within a quarter. But when you're doing that kind of volume, come on, you're going to have problems. Some of those problems are based on talent, and some of them are based on a projector lamp popping. It's
right.
It's all over the place.
Man, so many questions. All right. So before I forget, you talked about, investing in people and payroll as a great piece of marketing. Did you ever put DJs on like salary, or were they always contract per event? How have you, retained your talent?
Well, those are 2 very different questions. Let me ask you the first one first.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry.
I think I've had every single type of payroll scenario with a different person. Rock the House was an employee-based organization from the beginning and still is, based on how it is that we operate with most of our core DJs. Now, like a lot of businesses, as things have evolved and changed, and I believe that the barrier of entry has gotten lower, and I didn't really touch on that when you mentioned it, but I don't really throw stones at anybody who's an iPod DJ or has a camera, decides to be a photographer. I'm like, listen, the more the merrier. You're pushing the quality level of what I have to do higher, because I have to be able to set myself apart from what it is that you do. So you do you. Hopefully you can make enough to put money or to put food on your table for your family. But I think that I've had everything that you can imagine, and I can comment on all of them, right? About did I have a guy that maybe did 50 shows a year and then said, hey, I'm looking for a full-time job. Hey, do you want to work in the warehouse and do prep and have, benefits, healthcare, 401k, short-term and long-term disability? Yes, all of it. We've been doing that for 15 years. And I've also had people that were just weekend warriors, crushed it, as Mike Walter would profile, the teachers, the ex-military, the people that have the 9-to-5s that are looking for that weekend getaway. sort of thing. I've been all over the place, and I have opinions about each of them that are very different per scenario, per person. There is no one size fits all. And anybody who's listening to this and watching this that manages talent knows that you cannot manage talent the same. Fair and equal are not the same thing, and they're not even close. Any differently than you can teach a classroom full of kindergartners the same. You know, it's just not a thing. So now, how do you retain employees? I think that you retain employees by doing the exact same thing that I've said about our customers. We want to be honest. We want to be less transactional, if possible. We want to get what it is that we need from each other, but be honest about it along the way. We want to have open communication so that things don't bubble over. We're always going to have problems. Let's not kid ourselves. But, you know, how can we get to the place where we're talking about them as quickly as we can? As high standards you can have. There's moments in time in our history, as in the history of every company, that we're less proud of than others. Now, that's not the same thing as saying I'm not proud of our team. What I'm saying is that there are times in the hills and valleys of our growth where I am more proud of our team than others because we were hyper-focused or very, very, fortunate at the time. But you got to throw that word in there too. Dumb luck and fortune has something to do with it. But I don't really think that that's a coincidence when you're doing your best to treat people. I had a question in another interview I was doing about how many people do you have that you've either fired or have quit? And that number is like higher than 500. I mean, it's huge. Over 20 years, and there's a lot of people. I'm sure you understand. You know, you see people post on Facebook, "Hey, I need a helper on Saturday for whatever."
Right.
That was not our thing, but still, I mean, everybody, sort of a revolving door at certain times of the year.
Yeah. Real quick, I just wanted to say one of the things you said about, the iPod DJs and more power to them. That's an interesting perspective because I struggle with that, and not just as the DJ, but we do live bands, and there's like the weekend warrior bands, the bar bands. There's the the photographers, the DJs. I do struggle because I think it sometimes it can hurt. It hurts our collective reputation. When people see us by our lowest common denominator, and then the challenge for us, that those of us that feel like we're at the top of that game, is to try to convince them, because everybody can say in a not profile, we're the best. We're going to give you the greatest night ever. We service our client. Everybody says the same thing.
You got the perfect voice that too, Derek.
Hey,
it's just right on point.
I do voiceovers. But it's sometimes that's a challenge for me, that there is no barrier to entry because we have to fight the same. They're creating struggles that we have to fight. With people that aren't necessarily people that saw us at a wedding, so they already know our skill level, but they came to us through the knot or through some Google search or something like that, and we have to basically again start from that lowest common denominator. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense.
Yeah.
I hope that my perspective on this doesn't come across anything less than what it is. It's my way to be a shit starter. I'll be very clear. I think
start the shit. That's what we want to do.
What's that?
Start the shit. That's what we're here to do.
When I sit down at a table at a DJ convention, I'm just being open and vulnerable about this. I'm not really excited about talking about the latest and greatest channels of RF or the features of the next DJ controller. Like, that's cool, and I can. But it's not the passion that drives me about what's happening. So when we have the conversation, if somebody who's sitting next to me is going to take a position that is unfounded and unexplained about the iPod DJ or about something else, and there's no new information there, and I didn't do this to you, by the way, I was just telling you, I respect the fact that at one point I was in a conversation with somebody about the iPod DJ and probably said to a table of really good turntablists, I'm pretty sure I could do a better wedding than you with an iPod. Me with an iPod, against you. So what I'm saying is I detach what you referenced as the lowest common denominator from the tools of the job. Yeah. And I believe that every one of us started at some point with a tool that was looked down upon, frowned upon by the pros at the time. And what I want to do is get over that. I want to make sure that people understand that if you're going to throw stones, first of all, don't. But if you're going to throw stones, you better know why you're throwing them. And
Yep.
somebody who's a painter, I want to basically use the analogy that anybody that can go to Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever and buy a can of paint and a paintbrush and a roller and whatnot, they are a commercial painter the moment that they're painting a house for you. But I want to be the guy that can say, I don't need to buy the $8 brush. I can buy the $2 brush and I can still cut in just fine and do a great job. And that's all I'm trying to say. All I'm trying to say is that the iPod DJ, I can do a great job because my dad taught me really well how to program music at the time. At least I'd like to think so. The older we get, the better we were, right? And with photography, I understand light. Now I know that this isn't perfect. This shot, this video, but I understand light and exposure and focus and whatever. So if you want to give me a $400 camera, I'll make it look better than their $2,000, their $8,000 cameras most days. Okay, so like that's all I meant. Take it for what it
That's
is.
deep.
Right.
Matt, can you talk a little bit about that perspective in terms of, like when you see in the forums and as we see in the DJ forums, people complaining about the iPod DJ or the photographers with just, a new DSLR camera. I really think there's a lot of opportunity here for us to show value if you are an experienced company. And can you talk about how for people who are listening to this podcast who are like struggling with that same thing, can you share a little bit more about a perspective on how we can share our value and how we can use that to differentiate ourselves, not in a negative way, but really to show them why they're going to invest more for dramatically different results?
Well, first we have to define what dramatically different results are. And in most cases, what I think is that's in one ear, out the other, and it's just lip service. Because just like Derek said a second ago, everybody on the not.com can say we're the best. Well, what does that really mean? And I think the only place to find out what it is that you're doing differently is actually from your customers. You can't be the judge of what it is that you do differently. Only your customers can. And the things that you are doing differently now, if you're a trendsetter, are not the same things that you were doing differently 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago. So unfortunately, it's a full circle item. You come back to it and you go, am I good enough? And I'm speaking as a business owner right now, not as a DJ sitting in a circle of DJs. I'm saying, are you making the phone ring and are you talented enough to not even have to try to be better and to get the phone ring and for somebody to say, a planner that goes, I got to tell you, I have never heard anybody rehearse the intros before anybody entered the room. I'm really impressed. Well, that's not a thing that you would think to put on the sheet, right? That you and your assistant hit the posts and do all these things with your team before everybody enters the room. And the catering staff's like, why are you doing this? Because some of them don't get it. But the planner in the corner is like, yep, there's a reason that they're getting paid $2,500 right now. So one of the first and last gut check statements to make when you're talking to your true friends and people in the industry are you any good? My best DJ friends and my associates from organizations like Think Tank and the ones that I really trust in ILEA are the same ones that I can trust to tap me on the shoulder and say, I got to see what you or your company did that night and it wasn't that great. Now I'm being vulnerable and saying those are the ones I could trust to say that. And it hasn't happened that often, but it has happened. Yeah. Because we got to set that bar. We got to set that standard. So.
Yeah, absolutely. If you don't have something to reach up to, you're just kind of stuck where you're at. And I think that's something that we, as an industry, can fall into pretty easily. Being from the photo and video side of things, people can get into the gear, like you mentioned. Who cares what you're shooting with? It's not that. It's the talent behind it. But then the next level, which I love talking about it, is all about the business. If you can be an amazing artist, you have the best camera, that's great. But you're no business acumen, you're going to fail, and down you go. So I appreciate all the insight you're giving us there. I had a quick question. We talked a little bit about some of the pitfalls or things that you had as challenges. But like on a personal level or even in business, what are some things you're willing to share that maybe challenges that you rose to or that you learned from that you can maybe help inspire some people who are listening right now? So it's a deep one.
Yeah, it's deep, but it's COVID was a thing that I don't think anybody was ever prepared for. I do believe that the systems and the organization and the history allowed us to come out more healthy than I believe a lot of other people did. One of the things I said way back in like April of last year was, guys, I was talking to a group, and I apologize. It just happened to be a group of guys. Listen, man, there's going to be a whole bunch of people that aren't going to make it through this. And I'm really sorry to say that, but people are either going to know what a cash flow forecast is and know how to forecast whether they're going to have money left in a few months or they're not. And some people are going to just put their head in the sand. So I do have to say that I'm extremely proud of how it is that the company weathered the storm of COVID, because it is the true definition of adversity. Now, as it pertains to like personal relationships and how we all feel from a mental health perspective and other stuff, listen, the jury's still out on that. You know, a lot of things have changed. I've actually recently stepped down as the CEO of Rock the House. Here we are talking about what happened, and I'm not the CEO anymore. I stepped aside in late August, early September, and decided that the company can survive without me and that they don't need to pay my payroll anymore. Therefore, the team can do it, and I can potentially sort of decide what's next. Right? So that in itself, knowing that the company was managed effectively, properly with the whole team, and that I could make that happen, I'm really proud of that. But it's a major section of adversity. Besides that, you know what's funny? I don't have a lot of regrets in life. I have a very, very short list when somebody says, tell me about something that you regret. There's only a couple stories because there aren't many. Because I've generally and genuinely appreciated every moment of what's happened as it happened or very soon after it happened, to the point where I'd go, man, I wouldn't change a thing. I wouldn't change the fact that my parents were divorced. I wouldn't change the fact that I didn't go to college. I wouldn't change the fact that I sold businesses and stopped installing stuff and decided to do bar and bat mitzvahs. Like, I wouldn't change any of that. None of it. So, every step along the way, is that you guys or me? Apologies.
This guy.
That was
Way to
me.
go.
Nice. You know, I met my wife in 6th grade, and we started dating in high school, and we're like the all-American story. We got married after she graduated college. I told her I wouldn't marry her unless she had a degree, just in case something happened to me. And you know, we have 4 kids here in Cleveland. I've got a 15-year-old and I have a 9-year-old. 15, 14, 10, and 9. And you know, I started taking this time off a long time ago. Every Wednesday I would take off. I'd work hard on Monday, hard on Tuesday. I still work on Wednesday, obviously, but I would stay home with the kids and hang out, and that was my weekend, since I was all, you know, working through the weekends and stuff. And that's what transitioned into coaching and consulting. But I still love the fact that now, years later, I stopped performing about 5 years now. I had a young girl walk into a bat mitzvah at a country club, and I was in the back of the room doing something and you know, adjusting an uplight or something in the corner. She walked in, she goes, "Hey, how are you?" I said, "Hey, how you doing? You ready to have a good time tonight?" She goes, "Yeah." She goes, and she was like just being polite. She's just smiling. She goes, "So whose dad are you?" And I came home to my wife that night. I came back to my team, and I said, "Guys, I'm done. I'm done.
If only professional athletes would have that same.
Whose
Yeah,
dad
right.
are you?
Yeah.
Whose dad are you?
One season too many, right?
Right?"
What coach are you? Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Matt, can you talk a little bit, you know, as you brought up your family, talk a little bit about like tips or suggestions on how event professionals can, you know, make their best foot forward in terms of balancing family and balancing, you know, their business, and whether they're an entrepreneur or a business owner, or if they're, you know, somebody who's working for another company or something like that that really loves their team. Can you talk a little bit about managing, and how do you approach that with your family, and how do you find wherever that balance that people talk about is?
Yeah, I can talk firsthand about being a special event professional and having the balance that people perceive as good. Because I would get that all the time in hallways and emails, like, "Man, I can't believe you're able to do this, this, and that." It's always greener on the other side. Doesn't matter who you are or what's going on, there's always a next level to what it is you're trying to get to. So my personal experience is that I worked hard to take the pictures that I needed to make sure they were on Instagram, so I remember, because my memory is not good when it comes to savoring moments. It's a tactic and a strategy people use for happiness, is savoring, right? And
Right.
I've done those things in order to document them for one purpose. It's for me, so that when someday Cats in the Cradle is a real thing and my kids aren't calling or visiting, when I'm flipping through the photos, I can say, wow, I was in special events and I still had a chance to go do this stuff with my kids, or for what it is. This is sort of a what's next second half. There's a real great book called Halftime that I recently read, and this is like my second shot without being really deep into events right now, in order to say and be very proud of the fact that even before COVID happened, I would not miss a softball game, a baseball game, a soccer game, a show choir competition, unless it was like I had a 3-day conference with like that client. I would not miss them. But does it mean that we were eating dinner 5 nights a week together? No, of course not. We are now. I love that. But work-life balance has the word balance in it because of the balancing act, right? So there's your wheel of life and there's your wheel of business. It's when you grade yourself and you say, how am I on my health? I'm a 5. How am I on my business? I'm a 6. How am I on my relationship with my wife? Maybe that one's an 8. And when you put all those together, if that wheel can't roll because it's imbalance, you have some work to do. It's all about the amplitude of whatever's on that wheel at the time. And I've just tried to be mindful to practice what I preach and preach what I practice, which is, am I making good decisions or the best decisions I can? I'm not perfect. I'm far from it. I make mistakes. I make people mad. I make myself mad. All over the place. But the work-life balance is a struggle every single day. And I think karma's a real thing. So do good and good things will come. So.
Matt, on that note, I want to actually just take a turn here and talk a little bit about what I mentioned before that question about talking to people who are not entrepreneurs, who are maybe event professionals, who are looking to grow their career, and especially right now with what everyone's dealing with within COVID. I'd like you to share a little bit about that to those people who are looking for either how do they grow themselves, what's the next step, or how do they, look for new employment if they were in a position where they lost a job or furloughed. Can you talk about some suggestions in this time period with what's going on for the event professional?
That's a tough one, and I got to tell you, I'm not sure that I have a really great answer for it, because I believe that it's a very personal question. Without knowing a lot about an individual, there's no one-size-fits-all answer. I will go back to, if you're passionate about a thing and you know where you are and what you like to do, you stick with it. You stick with it through the thick and the thin, kind of like Bitcoin. Let's just be clear right now about what's happening on this very date. But I'm not sure that I would give that same experience share to somebody like let's say we had an AV tech or a DJ that didn't have the talent, wasn't great at their job, but thought that they liked it because they liked the people and they were in theater and whatnot. So that person ends up in COVID, but we know that person happens to be a very good blank. What is it? Are they a good painter? Are they a good graphic designer? Are you really going to look that person in the face and say, oh, just stick with everything's going to be fine? Well, no, maybe not, because you might not have a job at the end of this. Like, you have to go do what you have to do to put food on the table. So the things that edge into that are, how old are you? How educated are you? Do you have time to learn a new trade? Do you have a family? Do you have to make a certain amount of money? Can you go back to school and all those things? So I think it really just comes down to where are your opportunities? What are your opportunities? And if you don't yet have what that is, keep your eyes open. Because if your head's not up and your eyes aren't open, you can't see opportunities. If you're so hyper-focused on a thing that's so close to your face, or you're down in the dumps about it, you just can't see what's in front of you. And I mean, how many people do we all know that are now real estate agents, or are now doing, sales for some MLM thing that is successful? I'm just throwing those things out there. Yeah. So, I hope you don't mind me saying I kind of don't know how to answer it, but that's
yeah, sure.
The truth is, it's going to be different about every single person, and it's a very personal thing.
Yeah. You talked about opportunity, and you said you've been done for about 5 years or so from performing, from DJing actively. Is that right?
Yeah, from DJing.
Yeah, but again, I met you not as a DJ, but as more or less a coach. Let's call it. You were doing a presentation. I know you do coaching and consulting now. In a couple different capacities. And you mentioned earlier that the we us are, but right now your career is kind of focused on building yourself as a personal brand. And by the way, when you were talking about being at a wedding or running through doing a practice run through the names and all that, I don't want to let that go untouched. I think that's such an amazingly easy and awesome tip for a lot of different reasons. Number one, for the obvious reason, to get things right and to make sure you do a good job. But who's to say that your assistant can't document you doing that, and that becomes a promotional clip on your website that talks about the different things you can do that you do to differentiate yourself, why we're better. To me, like, those are little things that is the answer to the question I asked you. Is if you're better, show it. That in this day and age of personal brand building and documenting everything and vlogging, I mean, that's the way you should be doing it, in my opinion. But anyway, so you're moving forward now in the coaching and consulting, and you're building your personal brand. How did that come about for you? And aside from just having the ability to share the things you've actually done, what are you doing to build your personal brand, to get coaching and consulting clients, and kind of how are you running the current version of your career?
Man, my mind is spinning. You started this whole day today with let us into your mind, and I was like, man, I don't even know if you want to know these answers. You can't stop my mind. My mind never stops. Talk to my wife. And
we're going deep, baby.
Oh man, I'm gonna go left turn tangent on you real quick. The way you survive in this industry is that you've either courted or grown up with somebody who was in the industry as you grew into it, but it's so hard to maintain relationships with people that haven't been in them with you as you tried to continue. It's very difficult. I'm very fortunate. That's the whole reason I started to say that. I think I got off track, is that my wife has been near me, near all these things that I've done since I was 16, 13, 12, like whatever it is. So she's known nothing different ever about what it is, right? So I don't know, like, what perspective do you want to know about that? What part would be the most helpful, do you think, to the audience?
So you transitioned out of actively performing.
Yeah.
And you've now also transitioned out of running your company on a day-to-day basis. But you're not retired.
No.
Right? So now you're focused more on, sharing your experiences, your skills, but doing it to make money. So that, to me, is essentially building and utilizing your personal brand.
Okay.
So why are you doing it that way? And how do you? What are some of the things that you're doing on a day-to-day basis to? You're not just waking up to a slew of emails saying, "Please coach me," right? So you're getting out there somehow, some way. What are you doing now to keep moving?
Well, this year has been a difficult and challenging one for a lot of people. I'm no different. Okay, so there's a lot of emotional ups and downs that come along with essentially stepping down from your role in the company that you built, right? And I'm saying that singularly because I'm talking about myself, but I'm proud of the team. I'm proud of the things that they're accomplishing right now. But I've stepped down, and I'm now essentially a coach to my team, to our team, right? So I am a part-time employee with nearly full-time responsibility at certain parts to do a certain number of things on a weekly basis, and I also sell, right? Because I have customers that I do good things for, and I still enjoy producing events and doing everything from live to virtual and whatnot. So I've not really once ever, which is really interesting, and I'm kind of catching myself now that you said it, I have not done anything to focus on my personal brand or to focus on gaining additional customers of any sort besides reaching out to very small groups, because I just think it's important to give yourself some time to digest, to simmer, to sort of say what's next. I know what I'm good at. What I can't answer directly is, what am I great at right now at this moment that people need? And what do I not want to do? My whole thing, you probably remember, is decline, delegate, do. And I say it out loud. I got to decide what I'm not going to do first. I have to decide what I don't like to do, what just doesn't interest me, etc. So I've been keeping myself busy. My wife is a photographer. She does beautiful baby and family portraits. We bought a building here in our hometown, and I've been retrofitting it, one day at a time with a couple other contractors, and getting my hands dirty. I built a home studio here in my house, Matt Bucks. This is where I am now. It's been a heck of a project. So
what are you doing with the studio? What's the primary purpose of that home studio?
well, I was always, I have severe ADD. I was never diagnosed and never took medication for it, but I just know that it's part of what drove me and kept me going like all the time. And being able to have elasticity and bounce back. I would work at Rock the House and then go work up in the conference room, and then go work here, and then I'd go work at Starbucks. I loved the Starbucks and the hotel lobby just because it was a change of scenery. I could switch gears. So when COVID happened and everybody was basically sent home for what was happening, I had nowhere here in my house because my kids were all virtual learning. And I just carved out a spot in the basement, decided to take this spot and say, I need to be able to be comfortable in this area.
So you say studio, but you mean man cave.
Kinda. I'm not sure.
Matt, you got the cameras hooked up. Can we take a little peek here?
As long as you don't
switch?
mind, the screen might go black if I don't have the other camera powered up. But give me 1 second.
There you go.
Oh, nice.
There you go. So this is the wall. It's got a nice little rig on it where I can put backdrops and other things. As you can see, there's downlight. There's 4-point lighting in the room. I only have 2 of them on. I'm using my monitors for the other ones to brighten me up. This shot here is just a side shot for whatever it is. So there you go. But this is my studio. This is it. It's a nice little rig. It's fun.
Do you think it's showing off a little that you use high-end computer monitors as lighting?
Well, you said it's showing off. I think it's very functional.
Yeah, functional.
Yeah, that's a flat screen light. That's nice.
You know what? If we leave that view up for a second, Matt, one of the things I love about Matt's setup is that he does have a teleprompter on his camera. And so when he's coaching or on a video call or whatever, he is able to look us right in the eye, just like he has been during this whole interview. But, he's seeing our reactions, but you're seeing the eye-to-eye contact. And I think that's really valuable. I know myself, my camera is just off from my monitor. When I'm doing a sales consult or a meeting, I'm trying to look it in the eye, but I'm also like glancing back to see the reaction,
Right.
And so I do love that setup there. You can see it in that view.
Cool.
All right, I have a question about all this. So this room that we're in, this is my event company's office, and to me, this place is the culmination. I'm a long way from reaching the point that I think you've reached. I still have targets that I'm trying to learn, and why I asked about the way your mind works, because I really want a guy like you. You've achieved a lot of the things that I'm trying to achieve, not necessarily financially, but just the fact that you've created the day-to-day life that you wanted for yourself and for your family, and I'm shooting towards that. But this space was like a dream come true for me, to have a space that we can do this podcast in, that I can have clients in, that we can do anything we want in. And it means a lot to be able to have a space like this. Is that what that space is to you? And also that building that you got for your wife to build out as a studio, is that kind of like that kind of a project for her as well, and that you guys can build out a custom space for her to be able to do her photography and things like that? Because it sounds like you said you're doing the build out and you're having fun. Is it a labor, or is that a labor of love?
They're definitely a labor of love, but I think that it is the happy coincidence and the result of good decisions, one decision at a time. And it's the same thing that I've tried to live. The space isn't the choice. The space, your space, my space, these are the results of good decisions along the way, and being able to make yet another one that we know is going to make us happy. And in my wife's case, making a good decision for her to be renting in a space that was affordable at the time her business was growing, and then having an opportunity, keeping our eyes up and seizing an opportunity right in the middle of COVID, which is like the worst time to go, write a check out of your retirement and whatnot. I'm whole different conversation, but I have very strict rules about investing and debt and other stuff. And I'd much rather be putting money in our pockets instead of somebody else's mortgage for what's happening. So I just think this is a labor of love that makes my daily, this is therapy, and it's my sanctuary. having the ability to sit down here and record in 4K or 1080 and have a beast of a machine and live switch a very complicated show from one station that I also find elegant and simple. My desk here has no cables on it. I have these channels and stuff that are all drilled through my desk, so all the cables are hidden. Like, it's just part of what makes me less crazy, because I'm crazy, ADD, OCD, whatever it is, right? So it's
All
more
the
of a
DDs.
sanctuary and a
All the
tool
DDs.
than anything else. You don't buy a house and then furnish it instantly. I was going to touch base because you're talking about your space for the business. Rock the house we bought in 2005, built it out in 2006. We're still in the building. It has evolved so much. I mean, 2 of the rooms now are LED studios for virtual, and there's now a second floor of offices and like all this other stuff. So a lot changes along the way. That's more of like a tool function. But we also pride ourselves the entire step of the way. Like it has been really great to show our building off as a sales tool, and I do like that too. But I'm not inviting anybody here into Matt Bucks. We can stay like this.
Why is it called Matt Bucks?
I don't even know. I think it was because I was just joking about the fact that I wanted to have the Starbucks feel, which is what this table is here. Just chilling. I always have candle lit. I like the smell of vanilla. Like, I just like to chill. And
That's the
just sit
secret.
and move around.
Vanilla. Where's our candle, guys?
No, that's the answer. I thought when I first heard Bucks, I was thinking, money.
No.
So that makes perfect sense. Matt Bucks, Starbucks.
Easy, Matt. Show us the coaster.
Sorry, I got to get my eyes out of the shot.
Ta-da. Welcome to
There
Matt
it
Bucks.
is. Nice.
Matt, I want to hear a little bit about where you find inspiration and drive. You obviously have an insane amount of drive, and you mentioned kind of all the different projects and ideas and things that are always flowing. How do you renew and then keep going? And then where do you find inspiration or drive or whatever you want to call it to reach the next level, to just take those calculated risks in your instance?
In EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, there's a thing called the 5%, which is when you talk about the bottom, not the things that are the tip of the iceberg, but the things that are under it that are very, very based on like your vulnerability. 5% is that this last year has been almost devoid of what I would say is my edge of inspiration. Meaning that there aren't a lot of things that get me crazy excited to get out of bed, but on the days where it's there, I know that it's there, so I harness the heck out of it. Like, I know that it's
Right.
there, so I spend that day grinding for what it is. So when I take those things and I put them together with what actually drives me, conversations with people that are exciting and positive and don't suck the life, they're not energy vampires out of life, that those two things, when you add them together, equal me thinking about a thing where I'll wake up in the middle of the night sketching something out. Like, I have something sitting right there that I woke up 2 nights ago and had to write down because it was an idea for a seminar, right? So like I was just sharing, I should say. It's not about the seminar, it's about the idea in the seminar. I like listening to podcasts. I like watching movies that are not educational related for nuggets that have to do with education, and you're going to think it's silly, but like, I can name more business related things that I could package PG from The Sopranos and Godfather than I can from Wolf of Wall Street or from The Boiler Room. Like, I take things from the things that speak to me. I'm a sci-fi guy. I like Star Trek, Star Wars, and anything technical.
Nice.
Knew I liked this guy.
But I love the fact that whether you watch an episode from the 1960s or you watch one from the 1990s, if you know the Star Trek franchise, there are lessons in every one of these shows that are so well written that just teach us things. And I'm always learning. That's it.
The Next Generation was one of the most well-written shows I've ever watched,
Love it.
I thought.
Love it.
Okay, I want to drop a bomb on you then. Not the movie, because I thought the movie was horrible, but the book, Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card, if you have not read it.
Okay.
It's a sci-fi book. Ender's the main character.
Okay.
the basic premise is, aliens invaded Earth. We beat them off, but now we know they're coming back. So the government is now finding the most brilliant young kids and then, developing them into the next general. That's the premise. But the book, and it was actually referred to me by a business mentor. And it's a brilliantly written book. Orson Scott Card is an awesome author. But in this book, there are just lesson after lesson after lesson. The basic premise is they try to kill this kid because they figure if he dies, then he wasn't the guy anyway to lead us through, to save us from this alien invasion. So they keep throwing these challenges at this kid. And the whole book is him beating challenge after challenge after challenge and always finding a way to win to exactly the way you just described it. That's the most lesson-filled, without trying to be lesson-filled, book or movie I've ever consumed in my life. Orson Scott's Card, Ender's Game.
Well, it sounds like you need to put the
recommend
link to that book inside the description of this episode, because
See if
I
we can
think
get the
everybody
publisher to sponsor us.
needs to see it. Or
There
read
you
it.
go. There you go.
It's on my list.
Yeah, Matt. Hey, I just want to say, as we're about to wrap up here today, thank you for spending your time with us and sharing so much great nuggets with all of us. We're just curious. So we definitely love to have you back sometime and chat some more. But is there anything that you'd like to leave our audience with here before we sign off for today? And just some closing remarks about your journey and your experience in the event world and just in your life.
No, I just want to leave you guys with a thought of my sincere thank you, and I'm grateful for the opportunity. No, I've got no commercial here at the end. I'll let you do that or anything else that you want to do or say. I appreciate it, guys. And you keep the positivity going, keep things flowing, and keep teaching people. Again, build people, not things. Help people out, and good things will happen.
I love it. Yeah, man. I was inspired. Thanks for taking the time to connect.
Yeah, thanks, Matt.
Looking forward to the next one. And don't forget, have your favorite tequila ready next time. And also, when this whole pandemic thing is over, I'm looking forward to get back together in person and hanging out together.